Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another Sega Saturn review with us taking a look at the second and final wrestling game that saw release in both the North American and PAL territories in 1996. I'm talking about WWF In Your House, which saw release in November of that year in North America and then December of the same year over here in the PAL regions. It's worth pointing out that it was also released on the PlayStation and the DOS. This time around, you'll notice we've got an introduction video. It's not the highest of quality, but it does get you psyched and ready for some WWF action. Once you hit the main menu and press start, you will see you've got a choice of start game options, sound setup, and controller setup. Heading into control setup, you will notice the controls are identical to the previous game, Wrestlemania, the arcade game. Heading into sound options, we've got very few things that we can change there. We've also got options such as changing the difficulty, turning the power-ups to be color-coded random or completely off, and also turning the timer and blocking on or off. So once you hit the character selection screen, you'll see this time around we have got 10 characters. We've got Shawn Michaels, Vader, Owen Hart, Bret the Hitman Hart, Ahmed Johnson, the British Bulldog, Goldust, Undertaker, Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and of course the one and only Ultimate Warrior.
The Ultimate Warrior!
And once you select your mode of play, you'll see you've got WWF Season, Intercontinental Title, or WWF Title modes.
This is the Ultimate Warrior versus the man they call Vader and Shawn Michaels.
So like always, I'll be talking about visuals, sound, gameplay, content and lifespan, whether it's still worth playing today, and ultimately whether In Your House can make our Sega Saturn top 10. Like always then, I'm going to start with the visuals first, and In Your House isn't particularly impressive in this area in my opinion. It uses the same game engine as Wrestlemania, the arcade game, and it simply hasn't advanced in any way, shape or form from that game, meaning the game comes across as pretty uninspiring in my opinion. What seemed like a novel approach in the previous game now just comes across as being lazy in my eyes with the sequel. The main visual difference is the fact that all of the wrestlers have their own specific locations to fight in, such as the streets for Ahmed Johnson, the Rocky Mountains for Vader, and the Hart Dungeon for Bret Hart. But the downside for me in this eyes is that it actually takes away from the visual atmosphere that you want a wrestling game to give you. There aren't any fans really cheering on from ringside, and when you combine it with the fact that the backgrounds don't actually look that good either, it means the game doesn't really have much visual appeal. I feel the animations are just as wacky and unrealistic as the previous game, but something doesn't quite seem as impressive this time around, and it's quite hard to actually put my finger on it. There's a couple of positives with the wrestlers now having solid shadows rather than the disgusting mesh effect ones that were present in Wrestlemania, the arcade game, and the character photos on the loading screen are of actually a reasonably good quality. I personally feel that the game, because it left the 16-bit generation behind and it was only released on the PlayStation, the Saturn and the DOS formats, that the visuals and the animations really could have been made more impressive than what we got. So overall, in terms of visuals, pretty disappointing. The performance of the game is absolutely fine though. I didn't have any problems whether there was 2, 3 or 4 wrestlers on the screen, and it does perform absolutely fine. Now moving on to the sound effects and music next, and the game isn't particularly impressive in this area either, with one issue being the fact that Jerry the King Lawler has been replaced on commentary by Mr. Perfect, and he is simply nowhere near as good as delivering the wacky over-the-top commentary in the same way that Jerry Lawler could from Wrestlemania, the arcade game, and this is actually quite disappointing. You also don't get your character's intro theme playing after you win a match and progress on to the next one. You simply go back to the loading screen where Vince McMahon announces who is fighting next. Now, Vince's introductions for the wrestlers are actually pretty good quality, and he does give them that really good over-the-top presentation with the way he announces their names. Another one of the main issues though for myself is the fact that the game doesn't feel like it has much of an atmosphere that you want from a wrestling game, mainly because you're not hearing your character's themes after you win matches, and also there's no music playing in the matches to cover up all of the quiet spots. and it just means the game feels quite lifeless in all fairness. You still get the same wacky over-the-top grunts and groans along with the completely unrealistic sounds when you execute all of the moves, which is by no means a bad thing when you consider the style of fighting game that this is. I will also point out that one small highlight is in regards to when you win a match and you will hear your wrestler talk trash, with the best highlight of these being all of the Ultimate Warrior's catchphrases. Unfortunately though, it seems like they didn't get Bret Hart to do his own voice work and they had somebody come in as a substitute, and it simply does not sound right.
To the power of the Ultimate Warrior!
And if you thought you weren't going to get any samples this week from all the wrestlers' themes within the game, then don't worry, because here they are.
I've got the looks.
So moving on to the gameplay next, and the gameplay's exactly the same as Wrestlemania, the arcade game, with 2 punch, 2 kick, a block, and run buttons. So if you liked the way that Wrestlemania played, you will like the way that In Your House plays as well. The moves are performed by pulling off Mortal Kombat style input commands, and this will execute the wrestlers' moves that are at their disposal. In terms of additions to the gameplay over Wrestlemania, there aren't really many at all. You can collect power-ups in this game. Sometimes they'll be positive, sometimes they'll be negative, such as restoring or decreasing your health, increasing your combo meter, or stunning yourself or your opponent. You can actually turn the power-ups on or off in the menu as well. I would also suggest you play the game with blocking turned off, much like Wrestlemania the arcade game, simply because it gets very frustrating with the CPU blocking all of your moves. The only other thing in Your House that's worth pointing out as a difference is the fact that the health bars are shorter, which means you can defeat the opponents far quicker, but at the same time they can also defeat you much quicker as well. And that really is it. There is barely anything different within this game as to Wrestlemania, which is very, very disappointing. Much like Wrestlemania, if you fill up the combo bar, you can kick out in the second fall if you're about to lose. But there really isn't anything different, and it gets very repetitive, just like Wrestlemania did, very, very quickly. Handicap match after handicap match after handicap match isn't an enjoyable experience.
A grueling WWF Championship match!
So moving on to content and lifespan, and like I said before, there's 10 wrestlers this time around, which is a slight improvement over the 8. And in terms of mode of play, for one player, we've got Season, Intercontinental, and World Title mode. The Season mode is simply 10 one-on-one matches before you are declared the WWF Season mode champion. The Intercontinental title mode has 5 one-on-one matches, 4 one-on-2 matches, and then a final 1-on-3 match before you win the Intercontinental title. And then the WWF title mode is made up of 5 1-on-2 matches, 4 1-on-3 matches, and then a final match pitting you against 12 opponents, 3 at a time, until you've defeated all of them and become the WWF champion. The main problem is this is so similar to Wrestlemania the arcade game, it gets very repetitive very quickly. In fact, I think the Season mode is probably the best, just because they're just 10 standard one-on-one matches. Once you win any of these, you'll see some of your character's introduction video from when they came to the ring in real life, and that's it. Job done. There isn't really any longevity here in the one-player mode. There's no secret characters to unlock, nothing like that. There's no different kind of matches, no weapon matches, cage matches, tag team matches of the sort, no Royal Rumble mode or King of the Ring, nothing at all. It really is very minimalistic, and they just haven't added enough over the previous game. In terms of multiplayer longevity, yes, it does support up to 4 players, and there are 3 different styles of matches versus co-op and buddy play, but the big problem here is the lack of characters affects its lifespan in multiplayer, in my opinion at least anyway, because you're going to be using the same characters over and over again. You're going to get bored of seeing the same moves over and over again as well. Remember, the characters don't really have that many moves at their disposal. So in terms of content and longevity, on the whole, in terms of single and multiplayer, the game falls very short.
It looks like it's all over.
Now, like always, that leaves me with a few questions at the end to try and come up with answers for. Is this game still worth playing nowadays? Does In Your House make the Saturn top 10? And actually, does it feature in our wrestling game top 10 as well? This game is definitely not worth playing. It doesn't really provide any enjoyment. It's very repetitive. And actually, I find it less enjoyable to play than Wrestlemania, the arcade game, the prequel. And that's actually down to the fact that I feel less effort was put into this game. And it just shows when you're playing it, and you can probably sense it if you give it a bit of time, and you'll just learn that it just doesn't seem quite as polished as the previous game. Now, does it make our Saturn top 10? Obviously not. It wouldn't even get into the top 10 fighters on the system, but at the same time, it's not in the bottom 10. It's not a truly terrible game. It just doesn't do enough. It does exactly what a sequel shouldn't do, really, because it doesn't improve on the graphics of the first game. It doesn't really add much content, and it simply just feels like a waste of time at the end of the day. Does it make our wrestling game top 10? No, it doesn't get in there either. It's nowhere near as good as any of the other games that we have covered in that series. But of course, these are just my thoughts, and my thoughts alone. If yours differ, if you think the game is better than what I've said, if you think I've been too harsh on it, let me know with a comment down below, and of course explain to me why. If you haven't already done so, consider subscribing to the channel to keep up to date with all of my reviews and my first impression videos that I put out as well. And like always, I'll be back in the near future with another video. Goodbye for now.
To the midsection. This match is over.